Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to have you here for the opening session of the conference, Education What's Next? Formal Education and Training and Transition from School to Work in Rural Areas. I'm Francisco Simões. I'm the chair of the Rural NEET Youth Network, which is a cost action that organizes this online conference. And it's a real pleasure for me to be hosting the opening session today. This particular event, as I said, is part of the Cost Action Rural NEET Youth Network. And this action or this conference was intended to be a face-to-face meeting in October, but of course, due to the pandemic, that was not possible. But in a way, the fact that we moved on to an online conference meant that we could target more participants and more people coming into our conference. The organizing team of this conference is based in Lisbon. So given that the grant holder of this cost action is ISCTE, I have the pleasure and the honor to have with us the vice-rector of ISCTE for internationalization, Professor Dores Guerreiro. So I would open not the floor but the screen to Professor Maria das Dores for a few words this morning as we start this conference. Professor Maria das Dores, you will need to activate the sound.
Vou recomeçar então.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Dear guests, on behalf of my rector, it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to ISCTE through this virtual conference organized by the Costa Rural NEET Youth Network, coordinated by Francisco Simões. This is, from what I understood, quite big network involving 32 countries, around 90 participants, has its focus on the situation of young people in rural areas, in particular those neither working, neither studying, which is, as we know, a phenomenon reaching significant proportions in many countries, deserving to be studied, deserving to obtain solutions for improving the lives of such an important amount of the younger generations. And this network, from also what I understood, this network of young researchers and practitioners is actually working in this goal, with this goal. They want to create conditions for the production of knowledge about young people in rural areas. So far, they have already prepared several outputs, several reports, and a handbook of good practices, besides many other online activities. So, congratulations for the work done, despite the adversities of these current times with the pandemic. This is a project coordinated by Francisco, as I mentioned, by ISCTE, our university, within this cost actions funding, which is a very important environment, a very important framework. And the priority given by these cost actions to the training and integration of young researchers in international networks, promoting their future and professional development should be highlighted here. It is also worth mentioning the priority given to countries of low scientific intensity, and actually Portugal has been one country which we consider a successful client of these kind of programs. They aim at the internationalization and of the scientific staff in all different fields of knowledge, and I think we are accomplishing this objective, accomplishing this goal. It is also to be emphasized the turning of this action with ISCTE's orientations, namely in terms of internationalization. And I am here representing actually the director in the domain of international activities of our university. So I would like to emphasize two important reasons. First, this action is aiming at the reduction of inequalities in its most varied forms, namely reducing inequalities among different types of territories. And ISCTE has a long tradition of studying and analyzing social inequalities and trying to find solutions to address advice in this domain. Second, because it is a project oriented to the promotion of sustainability, in particular in vulnerable territories, these territories which need support for reaching its development, its integration, and its goal of sustainability as a global issue. I also would like to say before concluding, that while a grandholder of this rural NEET network, ISCTE should have held a major face-to-face event last October, as Francisco mentioned before, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, it has not been possible. And today, ISCTE is organizing this online conference. I also consider that there are some advantages of an online conference. Maybe some people who would not be able to come to Portugal are attending the conference, are participating, and we realize after almost 1 year of pandemic that we have been doing much more conferences and activities on an online basis that we would be doing before. However, the cost action and its philosophy is not doing online activities, but I believe that in the future they will be integrated in this way of working. But I would like to stress that there's today we are organizing this meeting, this online meeting. Portugal, as many other countries, is facing a very critical situation with a high amount of COVID cases exhausting our hospitals, and many people from older generations. In particular, the young people's grandparents are dying. So today's conference, exploring solutions for the younger generations to become full citizens, to give their contribution to the problems of the world in different countries. And this as a mission of the Rural NEET Youth Network leaves us with the hope that there will be, after this pandemic terrible period, a new life. So this new life without hope, without pandemic, and without inequalities, and with a sustainable territory and a global territory will be a good aim to reach. I am sure that all of you will make excellent contributions to make this happen. I hope this conference will enable rich and inspiring debates, I wish the greatest success for the project and all the best for today's conference attendance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dores, for sharing your thoughts and for your kind words. Now we move on to some words by Eunice Magalhães. She's the vice-rector of the Center for Research and Social Research and Intervention at ISCTE, which is the research unit that hosts this action. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Francisco, and thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank the organizing committee for inviting our research center. As Francisco said, our research center is the Center for Psychological Research and Social Intervention, CIS-IUL, to be here at the opening session of this relevant international conference focused on education and formal training. First of all, I would like to greet my colleagues from this panel. Dear Professor Emília Dores Guerreiro, as vice-rector for internationalization of ISCTE, and dear Dr. Francisco Simões, as the chair of this COST Action, Rural NEET Youth Network. Thank you for organizing this conference, but also for being actively involved in social issues and to create this network around the needs, risk, and protective factors of NEET youth or young people. This is a very important project, which is congruent with CIS-IUL mission. Surely our mission as a research center is to integrate different levels of analysis and different methodologies to apply strong theory-based approaches in diverse and complex social issues which require interventions and public policies anchored in science. For that reason, I wish you a very productive conference through a deep discussion about evidence-based solutions to complex social problems as NEET in rural areas, which brings the academy closer to professionals and public policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Eunice, for sharing some thoughts here. Before I move on to open the screen to the Secretary of State of Education, João Costa, Professor João Costa, I will just share with you some ideas about this action as a contextualization. So very briefly, for those of you that are not members and still don't know much about this Rural NEET Youth Network, after welcoming you to our international conference, I would like to explain who we are. So this action, as Professor Maria Dores Guerreiro mentioned, spreads across 32 countries and gathers right now 90 participants across Europe and worldwide. And this particular network is focused in some important goals. So our goals, our main goals, first of all, is we intend to establish a network, an inclusive network, which involves multi-stakeholders, from researchers to decision makers to NGOs that have direct intervention or indirect intervention with youth, not in employment or training across the member countries. We intend to foster knowledge, skills, and best practice exchange. And we do this with the intention to establish a good platform for new research. And our third intention is to gather all this knowledge and all our work to create an online observatory, which will be prepared by 2023. And it will serve as an open access synthesizer to store, disseminate, share all the research outputs that we are producing. I would like also to share with you what are our priorities, our main priorities. So we work based on annual thematic priorities, and during 2021, we are focusing on two main priorities: rural youth and formal education, and rural youth and mobility. But until 2023, we expect to focus also on how rural needs may be included in the agricultural sector. We also intend to discuss informal education in rural areas, employment service support to rural needs informal support networks, and other topics that might be relevant for this network. What can be expected from our online conference? So, in short, what we intend with this online conference is to share some information on the network's first outputs that we have developed for the past 12 months. Of course, we also have keynote speakers analysis of formal education challenges in rural areas. And we will have a series of parallel sessions focusing on several topics that are related to formal education improvements in rural regions across different European countries. We have presentations from Romania, Albania, Portugal, Spain, many of the member countries that are included in our action. This is our online website, so you can check our activity here and have and check more information on what are we developing right now. And before I move on and conclude, I would just like to thank, of course, to the extraordinary team that for the past 8 to 9 months helped to organize this conference, which is mostly based in Portugal. And a special thank also to the core group of this action who have been supporting the development of this international conference for the past few months. Also a word of acknowledgement regarding cost, and specifically Michael Perrault and Carmencita Malimban, who are responsible for the ongoing support of this action within cost. And of course to ISCTE and CIS, who are grant holder and hosts of this action for their continuous support to our work. So now I think it's time to move on and to, again, not open the floor, but open the screen to Professor João Costa, the Secretary of State Assistant of Education of Portugal. Thank you for being with us. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to participate in the opening session of this conference with such great importance. Let me, on Professor Francisco Simões, Eunice Magalhães, and the vice-rector Maria das Dores Guerreiro, greet everyone, greet ISCTE for never letting the country rest with new information, new research, that it's really a huge help in the definition of public policies, and greet all the participants from different countries. Like Professor Maria das Dores was saying, we now, it seems that it is easier to organize conferences, but one of my experience as an academic myself is that one of the big values of the conferences are what we discuss in coffee breaks with our colleagues, and that's where sometimes ideas for new projects, new papers emerge. So hopefully we'll someday get back to our normality, but not forgetting that these tools also work. When I was myself beneficiary participant of cost actions, and I think it's a very, very important tool that Europe puts at our disposal, because the focus is networking, and it's more and more clear to everyone, sometimes not people outside the academia, that without networking we do not make progress, because we may be studying exactly the same thing in different countries and we do not know what the others are doing, and sometimes we're being redundant instead of advancing in our research. So it's very good that this project was approved and put in action by all of you. The topic of the main theme of this action is very important to inform policymakers, because we need more data. We need determination on the political side, but we also need data so that we can have more and more evidence-based policies. When we talk about this topic, the NEET youngsters and the specific areas, rural areas, and what happens there, we are coming back to the essentiality of education, which is to promote social mobility and to promote adequate training for the challenges we face. And we know here in Portugal, the distinction more than between rural and non-rural, but also reflecting that is a big difference between the inland and the coast. And so we have huge amounts of population in the coast, and we have very a growing desertification of the interior, where most of the rural activities also occurs. The mistake that many times we in governments make is to pretend that all schools, all communities are exactly the same, and then we make education a standardized mass service, neglecting the differences, the different contexts, the different settings, the different backgrounds that students have when they come to school. And we still have many students here in Portugal that, on the side of working, they help their families with small rural activities, making them not have enough time to study, and making them lose motivation to be in schools. And for these reasons, we have been developing for the last decade, I would say, several measures that have to do first with preventing the very isolated schools with very small classes. We had many situations of schools that had 8 students, 5 students, and what happened was that when their transition from elementary school to 5th grade was a disaster. They lost a lot, and they lost also some social skills that school grants. And so we started here in Portugal building these school centers in the cities with a good network of public transportation to make sure that kids grow in a more stimulating, or learn in a more stimulating environment. This is so we have also this evidence that very small class size does not promote good education. Maybe not as big as we have here in Portugal still, although we are gradually reducing class size, but having 10 students, 8 students, 2 students in a class does not help them. The other area of intervention is also all the investment we've been making in vocational and educational training. So for many students, this is a vicious circle. Young people do not stay in their territories because there is no work, and there is no work because they do not have enough qualified workers. And this leads to a growing number of the NEET youngsters, and they are not studying, they are not working, they are not in any internship of any kind, and so their solution is to abandon and to pick whatever job in the coast area, in the big cities where there are more options. So, and this requires, it's difficult. It's a difficult thing because it's really a circle, and we need to know where to start. And so what we are doing, and my colleague, Secretary of State for the valorization of the inland, is very much focused on this, is to attack in all directions. So to stimulate the development of firms and companies in the interior of the country, to pressure me every day about the need for having a specific program in specific areas of the country. And we, on our side, what we are doing is to value vocational and educational training by making it, first thing we did was to eliminate all kinds of discrimination in our legislation. We had recent, when we started here 5 years ago, we had lots of legislation that called the science and humanities track the regular education, which is a powerful word because it means that vocational training is irregular, and it isn't. It's just another option. We eliminated some very severe discrimination that allowed for students coming from VET programs to access higher education, university in particular, and we are implementing for several years now, but we want to develop it further, a system of anticipation of needs for qualification. So we need to adequate our network of vocational schools and vocational programs to the specific needs of each territory. And so the network of programs has been developing in this sense. But now we want to take a further step, and that's one of our goals for also for the recovery of our economy and our society in the face of this pandemic, is to create some specialized centers in different territories, and which so that we are not replicating courses and programs that are not as important as others in our network. We have a good experience of this with our what we call them the rural schools, rural vocational schools. So this is a network of 13 schools around the country that train students in the vocational programs for everything that has to do with agriculture, animal production, and several other domains. These are national schools, so students from everywhere can access them, and they have residencies. They are allowed to stay, and we are not training farmers there. We are training highly specialized young men and women to be able to promote also the development of their territories as soon as possible. And just a final note, when we talk about this investment on education in the transition from school to work, we are also talking about two other sectors. One is the students with special needs. We approved a recent legislation that their final 3 years of schooling has to involve the development of a plan of transition to their practical and active life as an adult. And many times by law, this is done in partnership with the local employers in many territories. And the other area is our resurrection of adult education and training. We have a national program called Qualifica, which is very much focused on the completion of higher education by adults that dropped out of school, and also on the upskilling and reskilling of adults that for some reason lost, either didn't complete education, or the qualification they got is not the most relevant for developing firms in their territory. So thank you for having me here. Congratulations for putting together this conference. And as a transitional politician, because my real life is academia, I look forward to getting the results from your project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor João Costa. I think you shared not only a very good overview of the political measures in Portugal to tackle the divide between the inland and the coastal side of Portugal, but also listed some challenges that we have to face and that probably are going to be the main focuses of our discussions today. I think we have a kind of protocol inversion here. I hope Professor João Costa is not a problem for you, because we just I noticed that Professor Maria Emília Brederode Santos just came in. I think
in protocol I follow commands, so
no problem. Professor Maria Emília, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I don't. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes. We were just finishing the session. I'm sorry, but in any case, we still have 5 more minutes. So, as the president of the National Council of Education, if you could share some words on the topic of this conference and some of your thoughts on the meaning of this conference for the Portuguese Council of Education, of course.
Thank you very much. I'm awfully sorry. I was here at 9 o'clock sharp at the National Council, because at home I don't have very good conditions for this, but I couldn't manage to find the link to come in. So I'm very sorry, and I greet you all. I'm glad to be here. I thank you for that. I thank Professor João Costa, our Secretary of State of Education, for not minding that I changed the protocol around. And I greet you all. Thank you very much, Professor Francisco Simões, for the invitation. As you know, the National Council of Education is an advisory body, an advisory organization of our Assembly of the Republic and of the government. We answer requests they may make. We are made of 68 councillors coming from all sorts of social organizations having some interest and some connection with education. So we have representatives of parents associations, of teachers unions, of directors of schools, and of students, of the government, of different political parties, and also a small group of experts that are chosen by the councillors themselves. So we produce some studies. We use statistics that have been validated by the Minister of Education, and we produce every year a book called The State of Education, whereby we try to give a special treatment to those statistical information, and to make some relationships and identify if we are going in the good direction, being given by several different how do you say? Well, like for example, we have an agreement with the European Union of a certain number of targets that we should attain by 2020, and this was signed in 2011. Others, we also have taken into consideration the United Nations goals of sustainable development and so on. So we analyze the data taking into consideration those targets and those goals. And what we can say about, and we do this always for the year before. So we have just published the State of Education for 2019, and it is a very paradoxical situation, because on the one hand we are very happy that we have almost attained all goals for 2020. We were at least improving a lot. We have made a good way, so I suppose I could greet the Secretary of State, João Costa, on the good job they have been doing. But on the other hand, it's very almost painful to talk about it, because with the pandemics and the closing of schools and so on, obviously it has been a big disturbance, and we are certainly going back. One of the issues that we are always dealing with is the issue of inequalities, and that's where I think we can link a little bit with the concern of your meeting. The NEET youngsters are, we call them nine, are a difficult problem to deal with, and on one hand, and the rural areas are another difficult problem, because our inequalities are particularly evident. We can talk of inequalities in several areas. We talk about it in the age inequalities, for example, because older people have much less possibilities and opportunities to attain and to follow and to study and to learn. And that's always perhaps the most serious problem in Portuguese education. It's always the area of adult education, because it gets out of the system, so it's more difficult. We have inequalities in what we can talk about in gender, sort of, which is very paradoxical too, because on the one hand, you still have the reproduction of gender stereotypes, and girls going into other areas less rewarded financially than boys and so on. But on the other hand, school seems to be favoring girls more than boys in all levels of the school system. So there too, we could talk about inequalities. We do have inequalities. When I came in, Professor João Costa was talking about children with special needs. And of course, there too, we have inequalities, which, however, the school system has been doing a very good job in answering, like, for example, in our study, we noticed that children with special needs are diminishing in the lower grades and increasing in the higher grades. So they are reducing like the population is reducing, but they are increasing in the higher grades because they are getting there, which did not happen before. So that is, I think, a very good sign, although we still have a lot to do, particularly in higher education, I think.
So, Emília, I'm sorry to interrupt. I really hate this role of cutting out the word, but we're really struggling with a very tight schedule. I hope you can understand that.
Of course.
So if you could please just conclude, because we have a session just beginning now.
Thank you. I just make a small...
I hope you understand this. I'm sorry.
Of course I do. I am sorry that I arrived, that I entered so late. So just to say that, for example, in our last study about the education, the state of education, we can see that the proportion of youngsters from 15 to 34 years old who do not study nor work has been reduced from 15% in 2014 to 9.5% in 2019. So I think it was also in that population, there was also a quantitative progress anyway. but it was very irregular, taking into account regions. And so that's another inequality that we have, is between territories. And the region of Azores that Professor Francisco Simões knows well is one of where the problem is higher, while the center of the region of the center of the continental Portugal is one of, we have the lowest percentage of NEET. So we do have to have into a consideration these different types of inequalities, social, economic, cultural, but also territorial and otherwise. Thank you. I'm sorry.
We're much welcome, and I really appreciate your words and your participation. So we managed to have you with us, so that's just wonderful. Thank you very much for coming. I would just like to remind everyone that we're starting now a session on our cost action, a panel dedicated to some of our outputs. It's going to begin just next. And before I finish up, I would like to thank again all the invited speakers in this opening session for their participation. And I hope that we can very soon share with you some of the conclusions of this, not only of our action in general, but of this conference too. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.